G'day, Stu from UAVfutures here, and today, well, what we're checking out, besides being my first review in the new studio, we're checking out this new little 3-inch racing bad boy from HG the new Arrow. Now, this is the bench breakdown, the part 1, so we're going to be looking at the text and the specs. If you want to watch part 2, that should be popping up here very soon, or about to go on flight, so the card should be popping up there if it's available, or it should be linked down below. But what we're going to do, we're going to be breaking this down, looking at its components, and finding out, is this the right little 3-inch for you? Because there's a big market in the 3 inches. A lot of people love them, but there's also some stiff competition. And this is where I'm also going to bring up the point that HG might be their own worst enemy here, because they made the HG XJB 145, which was a big mouthful and a crazy good drone. And this is pretty much like taking that drone to the next level. So I can't wait to take it out to the field, rip it around. That's where in the part 2 we'll have a lot of fun with it, with all the boys, seeing how it goes. But this is the bench breakdown where we look at the text and the specs. Now what we're going to do, hopefully this is in focus with the camera up in the roof. So bear with me because, well, I guess I'm just trying to learn how my new studio is going to work. But what we should do, let's jump right in and find out what makes this thing so special. So as an overview, what it is, it's a 3-inch racer. It's designed to be taken out of the box, ripped around, a very super simple setup. It's doing some things that are pretty special. Like you'll notice, it's as well as a stretched X. It's also kind of like a dead cat. So the front is smaller, or I guess skinnier, and it is wider at the back, which makes for a very interesting profile. So I can't wait to see how that actually handles in the air. We used to do this back in the day, and then drones moved to like true X's or crosses, and it's interesting to see it come full circle. So that's going to be interesting. What's that older design like with today's modern tech? If we stick it on the scales, it's coming in at about 177 grams. If I stick a battery on here as well, hopefully you guys can see that. I'm not too sure how much of that is actually coming up with the top screen, but with this on there, it's 286 grams. So it is a little bit heavier than the traditional XJB. And if you're trying to sneak under that 250 gram weight limit, well, you're probably going to have to use a 3S, which I feel like is a little bit cheating on this drone. You're going to be selling yourself short. If you get this, definitely use a 3 or a 4S if you get this version. But I should also say, for those people who like to go a little bit crazy and you somehow found the batteries, they also make a 6S version. So I've got the 6S version here as well, so the 5 and 6S version. And if I had better batteries, or I could find some to put on this thing, that's what I would want to fly. But that's a bit of a problem for me, because at the moment, I don't really know where these battery options are for a tiny little 3-inch craft that can also rock a 6S. Now what we should do, let's break it down. I'm going to use this version actually, so I don't stab myself with the props, because we've just got some little Gemfran props on the outside. But yeah, let's break it down, have a look. This is the 6S version. It is absolutely identical to the 4S version. The only difference is the motor KV. So let's do that now. Start at the outside in. On the 6S version, they're the HG forward motors. They're 1408s, 2400 kV on here, and I believe these are 3600 kV on the 3 to the 4S version. This is the one I'm going to be flying in the part 2. Then of course towards the middle we've got one of the stars of the show, and I'll put a picture on the screen as well. We've got a 45 amp 4in1 ESC. Now that is, and it can take a 4 to a 6S LiPo. So that ESC they've got in there is ridiculous. Definitely a very, very cool. I'd never thought that like that ESC is kind of about as big as my first 12 amp ESC that was just one. So it's crazy to see just how much we're able to shrink this stuff down. So to have a 6S capable ESC that is that small is kind of next level. Very exciting stuff. On top of that, we've got our Betaflight F4 flight controller. That stuff is all pretty standard, and I should say it's all soft mounted as well, so you know it's going to reduce some of the gyro noise. Then we've got our little HG I need a better name. I wish I could just shorten that, but we've got their little VTX on the top. That's got all the channels. That's all pretty standard stuff. Smart audio, yada yada. And then of course we've got our little receiver, and I did like this in the bind and fly. I've got to say it took about 2 seconds to bind it up to my radio, because you don't need to take it apart or anything like that. You can simply just poke your little receiver on the top. Very easy to access, bind up to your radio if you're using FreeSky, and then you're ready to rock and roll off to the races. And then at the front, what we've got is one of the stars of the show. So this is one of the new Cadex cams, and it is off the chain exciting. When you're flying FPV, it's really important to have a good FPV cam. This one, it has a crazy field of view, like 180 degrees. I think it's a 1.66 lens, and this bad boy, I think it's called the Ratel, I think that's how you pronounce it anyway, is a beautiful camera. It's got a huge, I guess, I don't know what you call, like huge aperture, or he lets a lot of light in. It looks amazing anyway, so I can't wait to do that, especially because these things are not really designed to carry a GoPro. And then towards the end, we've just got one of our little screw-on antennas, which is also pretty cool as well. So it's going to make changing your antenna very, very easy, and it's also kind of in this TPU mount that's connected directly to the back. Now, with all those components out of the way, let's move on to the design of the thing, and I really like what it's doing. So first things first, let's talk about some differences between this and the XJB. So the XJB was a unibody, whereas this is, I guess, made up of 4 individual arms. So hopefully in the future, I don't think they're out at the moment, but you should be able to buy some separate arms, which is always nice, but I find myself not breaking too many 3-inch arms because they're generally lighter, so they don't have as much inertia in the crashes. But yeah, so we've got some 3mm arms here, but this is kind of crazy. Check this out, and hopefully this is in shot. And not only is it, you know, a stretched X sort of frame, it is also, well, you know, it's skinnier at the front and wider at the back. So like dead cat or reverse dead cat, it's a little bit crazy to see. And what it should result in is a little bit of some cleaner air going into the back props in some very, very fast forward flight. But I guess that's the theory behind it. We're gonna need to test that and find out, can we actually notice that difference in the part 2, excuse me, flight review. Other things that I really like about the design, and then maybe some things I would change. I don't mind this TPU mount at the back. I do think it's a neat way to sort of mount your camera, but I wish there was an extra way to zip tie it down, because I am worried about it sort of ripping off in a really, really hard violent crash, especially if you have an even bigger antenna on the back. And then towards the front, another part is the design of the camera protection. So we have such a beautiful camera here in the front, and I feel like it's going to get destroyed if you hit a flag. So that for me is the biggest concern, or something that I would like to change on this one. Yes, it's going to be amazing, but like all XJBs or some of the HG LRC little frames, it's kind of a little bit susceptible to some camera breakage. Now what we should do, let's move on to the quality of the thing, and I'm going to say I've seen the HG LRC factory, and I know from, you know, the consistency of Cal's XJBs, HG LRC makes some amazing stuff, and this one, it's no exception. So it looks beautiful, and also it's going to, you know, I mean, the shoulder joints look beautiful. Everything in here is top quality. The way it's been put together is very, very high quality. So I'm going to give it about an 8.5 out of 10, and the components as well, especially with like that camera that I absolutely love. I think the components are about the same, probably about an 8.5. So in the quality side of things, big points there. And that brings us on to the pros and the cons. So let's get the cons out of the way first, and for me, probably the biggest one, that brings it down to camera protection. I am a little bit worried in a really hard violent crash into a flag, how is it going to actually, you know, there's nothing really stopping this lens from breaking. That camera is amazing, that lens is huge, though, sticking out the front, and I do wish they had a little bit of better camera protection. And then some other little nitty-gritty things towards the back. If you really try to tighten this up, what's actually happening, you know, I don't know if this is going to be in shot or in focus here, I don't want to twist it too much. If you spin this around, and this happens on both of them as well with the antenna, the part inside is not getting enough bite, so it's actually just spinning the cable underneath, which could result, if you were just trying to tighten it up, with maybe snapping off the little UHF-L connector or something in there. So I wish that part was secured a little bit better, and I would like a zip tie around here. I'm going to probably put one around for some extra strength. And then that brings us on to the pros of the thing, so things I really like. Number one, I really like the price. So I think it's about the $200 mark. I'll put a comment down below too, or pin something where you can get a discount as well. I think it's like UAV8 or UAVfutures 8. Anyway, so I think the price is relatively good once you factor in the discount. It's not quite as good as the XJB used to be, but I understand the components in here are a little bit higher quality and a little bit better. But once you put that discount in, well, I guess it's coming a little bit closer. So I'm not sure what that brings it down to. Like knock, I don't know, what, $16 off or something like that. So about the 180 mark possibly, or you know, 185, so that's not too bad. I love the 6S capable ESC, the powertrain's on here, everything. You get some spare props as well, you should say. And then the last one, I really like how you can replace the arms, but you need to have those replacement arms ready for sale. So I'm not too sure in these early stages, because it might just be on pre-order, I'm not too sure, check that out. But yeah, can you actually buy those spare arms? And then again, do people really break many 3-inch frames? Because I find in my flying, because they're so light, they tend to bounce a lot more than some of their 5-inch bigger brothers. And then speaking of 5 inches, that brings me on the last thing I want to talk about before we wrap it up is, well, when you get the 6S version, how many people actually have 6S tiny little 4S, 6S tiny little packs to put on their drone? So for me, I've got like a 850 4S. I'm going to be ripping around on this 4S version, but I don't know, put your links down below, or where do you recommend to get some batteries? I've never really heard of too many 6S capable tiny little craft. I know for 5 inches, there's a few options out there. There's a few, this is so many numbers. For 5 inches, yes, we have a few 6S packs. For 3 inches, we don't have too many 6S options at the moment. So that's another thing you need to weigh up, whether you get the 4S version, which is probably the one that I would recommend, especially with the battery options nowadays, or do you want to go a bit crazy, and if you can find the right battery, pick up the 6S version. But anyway, that's it on the bench. The bench breakdown part 2 should be up soon, or it should be possibly up right now, so definitely go check that out. What do you guys think? Drop your comments down below. If you want to pick one up, I'm going to put down the discount code. I'm not too sure how long that actually lasts for, but that brings it down to, I don't know, 185, between 180 and 190 or something like that. So definitely check that out if you want one. Other than that, subscribe for more FPV related XJB V2 almost, or arrow action. And as always, happy flying. I should also say as well, I like the name, like the arrow. I kind of get it. If you follow the trajectory of the line that these two things make, it is eventually going to make, a bit of a triangle or a pointy arrow. So at least this one, I do get the name. Anyway, happy flying.